Something unusual is building in the sky as we approach August 27th and 28th, 2026. A powerful partial lunar eclipse is about to reach its peak, and astrologically, this period is being viewed as a time of emotional release, endings, and major internal shifts. The eclipse reaches its maximum around August 28th, but the energy people are watching begins building before the peak. And that is why the next 24 to 48 hours deserve your attention. This isn't the time to panic. It's not about believing that something terrible is guaranteed to happen. Instead, think of this period as a moment to slow down and notice what has been building underneath the surface. Old emotions, unfinished situations, toxic patterns, relationships that no longer feel healthy, and decisions you've been avoiding because you weren't ready to face the truth. A lunar eclipse is traditionally associated with emotional intensity and endings in astrology, and when an eclipse approaches, many astrologers recommend observing what is naturally coming to an end rather than trying to force a completely new beginning. That is why there is one particular warning you may want to remember during this eclipse window. Don't force your manifestations. If you've been planning to manifest something, make a major emotional decision, or suddenly change your life because you feel an intense cosmic pull, take a step back first. Give yourself time, because sometimes the thing you desperately want today is not what you actually need tomorrow. The better approach is to observe. What keeps repeating in your life? What situation is draining your energy? What conversation have you been avoiding? And what are you finally ready to release? These questions may become more important than trying to predict exactly what the eclipse will bring. And there are 5 zodiac signs that astrologers may want to watch especially closely during this eclipse window. Their emotions, relationships, priorities, or personal direction could feel particularly activated. So stay with me, because before we reach those 5 signs, there is one important thing you should understand about the August 27th to 28th eclipse window. The most important thing to understand is that the eclipse itself is only one moment. The hours leading up to it are where astrologers often place the focus. As August 27th progresses toward the eclipse peak, emotions can feel stronger, old thoughts can return, and situations you've been trying to ignore may suddenly demand your attention. You might find yourself thinking about a person from your past. You might suddenly question a relationship, or you could realize that a habit you've been repeating is no longer helping you. Don't immediately assume that you need to act on every emotion. Sometimes an emotion is simply showing you something that needs to be understood. This is why the pre-eclipse period can be useful for reflection rather than reaction. If an argument starts, don't rush to make a permanent decision. If someone disappoints you, give yourself time before responding. And if an old problem suddenly comes back, ask yourself why it is appearing again. Is there something you never truly resolved? Or is it simply showing you a pattern that you're finally ready to leave behind? This is also why many astrology traditions treat eclipse periods differently from ordinary days. Instead of forcing new beginnings, the focus is often placed on release and awareness. Clean up what is already there. Finish what needs to be finished. Step away from what consistently drains you, and give yourself permission to stop carrying something that no longer belongs in your future. The biggest mistake would be allowing temporary emotional intensity to make a permanent decision for you. So, during this window, remember one simple rule: observe first, react later. Because the eclipse may not be creating the truth in your life, it may simply be making a truth you already knew much harder to ignore. As we move closer to the eclipse, pay attention to the patterns that keep repeating. Maybe it's the same argument happening again and again. Maybe you're constantly giving energy to someone who gives nothing back. Maybe you're staying in a situation simply because you're afraid of what happens after you leave. These are the kinds of patterns worth examining during this period. The goal isn't to suddenly cut everyone out of your life. It's about recognizing what consistently leaves you feeling exhausted, confused, or emotionally stuck. Ask yourself one honest question. Is this helping me move forward, or is it keeping me attached to the past? That question can reveal more than any prediction. This is also a good time to clean up unfinished emotional business. If you owe someone an apology, consider whether it needs to be made. If you need to forgive someone, remember that forgiveness doesn't always mean allowing that person back into your life. And if you need to forgive yourself for an old mistake, this may be the moment to stop carrying that guilt. Because releasing something doesn't mean forgetting it. It means deciding that it no longer gets to control your future. And this is where the eclipse symbolism becomes especially powerful. Something may be ending, something may be changing, or you may simply be seeing an old situation with completely different eyes. Don't fight that realization. Listen to it. The question isn't, what am I going to lose? The better question is, what becomes possible when I stop holding on to what has already served its purpose? For some people, that realization may involve a relationship. For others, it could involve a career path, a habit, a fear, or an old version of themselves. And as we get closer to August 28th, those themes may become increasingly difficult to ignore. Now, we need to talk about one of the biggest warnings surrounding this eclipse period: manifestation. If you've been planning a powerful manifestation ritual, making a major intention, or trying to force a specific outcome during the eclipse hours, consider slowing down. Why? Because eclipse periods are often associated with uncertainty, emotional intensity, and sudden changes. You may think you know exactly what you want today, only to realize a few days later that your priorities have completely changed. So, instead of saying, "I need this specific thing to happen," try asking a different question. What do I actually need to release before I move forward? That shift in mindset can be much more useful. Use this period to journal, clear your space, finish unfinished tasks, reflect on relationships, review the decisions you've been avoiding. And if something naturally begins to leave your life, don't immediately assume it is a punishment or a loss. Sometimes an ending creates the space for something healthier to begin later. Most importantly, don't make a permanent decision simply because you feel an intense emotion during the eclipse. Give yourself time. Let the emotional waves settle. Then decide. And remember, this isn't about being afraid of the eclipse. The eclipse is an astronomical event, while the astrological meaning is an interpretive tradition. You don't need to fear the sky. You simply need to use the moment as an opportunity to become more aware of yourself. And for 5 zodiac signs in particular, this period may feel especially personal. Now let's look at the 5 zodiac signs that may feel the eclipse energy more strongly. Pisces comes first. This eclipse may bring attention to emotions, relationships, and personal boundaries. You may finally recognize that something you've been tolerating is no longer healthy for you. Aquarius could experience a shift in friendships, social connections, or long-term goals. Someone may reveal their true priorities, or you may realize that your own priorities have changed. Virgo may be pushed to look more closely at balance, especially between work, responsibilities, and personal life. Something you've been trying to control may require a different approach. Leo could feel a strong need to step back from situations that constantly demand their attention. An old emotional pattern may become obvious, giving you a chance to respond differently this time. And Scorpio may experience deeper emotional reflection. Something from the past could resurface, not necessarily to bring it back, but to help you finally understand why it affected you. For all 5 signs, the message is similar. Don't chase what is leaving, don't force what isn't ready, and don't mistake an emotional moment for a final answer. Instead, watch what the eclipse reveals, because sometimes the most important change isn't something that happens outside of you. It's the moment you finally decide that an old pattern will not control your next chapter. So what should you actually do as the eclipse approaches? First, slow down. You don't need to react to every emotion, message, or unexpected situation that appears. If something triggers you, give yourself time before responding. Second, clean up what has been weighing on you. That could mean finishing an unfinished task, organizing your space, having an honest conversation, or simply deciding that you're no longer going to repeat an unhealthy pattern. Third, protect your energy. You don't have to attend every argument. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. And you don't have to keep proving your worth to people who have already made their decision. Sometimes, protecting your peace means knowing when to step away. And finally, don't force a new beginning just because you feel uncomfortable with an ending. Let the old chapter close naturally. The eclipse can be a powerful reminder that not everything needs to be carried into your next chapter. If something leaves, observe it. If something returns, understand why. And if something feels uncertain, give it time. Because the goal during this eclipse window isn't to control everything happening around you. It's to become clear enough to recognize what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And as we move toward the peak on August 28th, there is one final shift you should pay close attention to. As the eclipse moves closer to its peak, the most important thing is not to become overwhelmed by everything you are feeling. The hours before a major emotional shift can make ordinary situations feel much bigger than they really are. A simple message can suddenly feel extremely important. A small disagreement can feel like the end of a relationship. And a decision you've been thinking about for weeks may suddenly seem urgent. This is where patience becomes your greatest advantage. Before you send that message, sleep on it. Before you end something permanently, make sure you're acting from clarity rather than anger. And before you make a major financial or personal commitment, give yourself enough time to think. Instead, use these final hours to observe. Notice who brings peace into your life and who constantly creates confusion. Notice which responsibilities genuinely matter and which ones you've been carrying out of guilt. And notice the thoughts that keep returning, especially when you're alone. Those repeated thoughts may tell you more about what needs your attention than any external prediction. The eclipse doesn't require you to do anything dramatic. You don't need a complicated ritual. You don't need to fear what is coming. You simply need to be honest with yourself. Because when the emotional intensity settles, the clarity that remains can be much more valuable than any temporary reaction. And for the 5 signs we've discussed, Pisces, Aquarius, Virgo, Leo, and Scorpio, this may be an especially important moment to ask, what am I ready to stop carrying into my next chapter? That question could become more meaningful than you expect. As we reach the final stage of this eclipse window, remember one thing. You don't have to be afraid of what is ending. Sometimes we hold on to people, situations, habits, and expectations simply because they are familiar. But familiarity doesn't always mean something is good for us. If this eclipse period makes you recognize something you've been avoiding, don't immediately run from that realization. Sit with it, understand it, and then decide what you want to do differently. This is also why the next few days may be better for reflection than impulsive action. You don't need to force a relationship to stay. You don't need to chase an opportunity that keeps disappearing. And you don't need to prove yourself to someone who refuses to see your value. Let the situation reveal itself. For Pisces, Aquarius, Virgo, Leo, and Scorpio, pay particular attention to emotional patterns, relationships, friendships, personal boundaries, and the decisions that keep returning to your mind. But regardless of your zodiac sign, the same message applies. Release what drains you. learn from what returns, and protect what gives you peace. The August 27th to 28th eclipse is not a promise that your life will suddenly change overnight. It is an astronomical event, and astrology offers one traditional way of reflecting on its symbolism. What happens next still depends on your choices, so don't give your power to fear. Use this moment to become more honest with yourself, because sometimes the most important thing an eclipse can reveal isn't what is coming into your life, it's what you are finally ready to leave behind.